Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards.
If you're listening to this podcast, then you're in great company. We've got thousands of listeners who have a thirst for continual improvement and raising standards in business. Whether your interest is in quality, sustainability, or risk standards, I'd love to welcome you as a member to our online platform for all things ISO, the ISology Hub. The ISology Hub is the leading place to get access to all of your online resources, from in-depth training courses, through to our very popular coffee break training, to templates and action plans and many other resources to help raise standards. As a member, you get access to over 100 courses, taking you from learner to practitioner to leader. The ISology Hub has all the resources that you need, which will really help to make your life easier and to help improve compliance in those business critical areas. So if you'd like access to learning and compliance resources ranging from data privacy to environmental management, anti-bribery, business continuity, quality, health and safety, to name just but a few, the list is endless actually, then we'd love you to come and join us. Just head over to the isologyhub.com.
Hello and welcome to the ISO Show. My name is Steph Churchman and I'm the Communications Manager here at Blackmores, and you may recognise my voice from a few previous episodes. Usually I'm the one just doing the editing and the publishing, but today I'm going to be talking to you about sustainability standards. Now, I won't be taking you through an exhaustive list of them, otherwise we'd be here for a very long time, but I will be going over some of the most popular ones and then going into more detail about the pros and cons for each one. So if you're on the fence about implementing a sustainability-focused ISO standard, maybe this can help you decide what might be the best fit for you. Before we start, I'd like to announce an upcoming workshop that may be of interest to any of you making a start on your ESG journey. So on the 26th of March 2025, we'll be explaining how ISO standards directly support ESG compliance. And we're including the opportunity to participate in one of 3 interactive sessions that tackle things like completing a materiality assessment, a balanced scorecard, and learning more about the current mandatory ESG reporting requirements. So a link to register for that event will be available in the show notes. Right, now let's dive into the world of sustainability standards, starting with ISO 14001, the standard for environmental management. Published back in 1996, this standard is one of the staples in the ISO world, which is backed up by the fact that it's been there in the top 3 most certified to standards across the globe for the past 10 years now. Its main purpose is to establish and implement an effective environmental management system, with the primary goal of helping organisations to minimise their environmental impact and achieve sustainability objectives. It sets out the general requirements for pollution control, reduction of your impact to the environment, and compliance to relevant legislation. It's also based on the Annex SL format, so ISO 14001 can be easily integrated with any other ISO standard, such as ISO 9001. I'll also note that this standard is due for a revision soon. So if you weren't aware, ISO standards go through a revision cycle once every 7 years on average, where a standard is reviewed and updated to align with the current landscape. In the case of ISO 14001, the revised standard will include considerations for changes to available technology, more emphasis on product lifecycle and supply chain issues, and further guidance on integrating environmental issues into your strategic planning. So what are the benefits of ISO 14001? Starting with the obvious, reducing your environmental impact. By identifying and controlling environmental aspects, organisations can minimise pollution, reduce waste, and conserve resources. There is also a specific requirement for emergency preparedness and response, which specifically relates on how you would respond in the event of causing an environmental incident. Next is improved compliance. ISO 14001 helps organisations comply with environmental regulations and legal requirements, such as the Environment Act 2021, and this reduces the risk of fines and penalties. Next is improved efficiency. ISO 14001 helps to tighten production processes, leading to better efficiency and reduction in the risk of incidents. It also removes uncertainty by managing disruption and waste and helps to clarify staff responsibility. And I'm sure you'll agree that everything runs more smoothly if everyone is singing from the same song sheet. Next is enhanced reputation. So demonstrating a commitment to environmental responsibility can enhance your reputation and brand image, attracting environmentally conscious customers and stakeholders. On an internal level, it also improves morale, often leading to sound environmental solutions that could be suggested by staff, who are the ultimate owners of the business processes. Next is cost savings. Implementing an environmental management system can lead to cost savings through improved resource efficiency, reduced waste and disposal costs, and lower energy consumption. Businesses can also benefit from reduced insurance costs by demonstrating better risk management. And lastly, increased competitiveness. ISO 14001 certification can give organisations a competitive advantage in the marketplace, particularly in sectors where environmental performance is a key consideration. If you go to tender, you may also find that there are requirements for select ISO standards such as ISO 14001. This is certainly the case for a lot of government contracts. So those are all the positives of ISO 14001, but what are the disadvantages of implementing ISO 14001? The first probably won't come as much of a surprise, it's initial costs. Implementing an environmental management system requires an initial investment in resources, including training, creating documentation, and potentially hiring consultants. And if you're going for certification, that will incur its own costs from a certification body too. There's also ongoing maintenance. Maintaining an environmental management system requires ongoing effort and resources to ensure compliance with the standard and continuous improvement. And again, if you're going for certification, there will be costs for annual surveillance visits and recertification after every 3 years. There's also a potential for bureaucracy. If not implemented effectively, an environmental management system can become cumbersome, hindering operational efficiency. You really do need commitment from the top down. Without this, your management system will remain stagnant. And lastly, a limited scope. So ISO 14001 focuses primarily on environmental aspects within an organisation's direct control, and may not address broader environmental impacts or social responsibility concerns, which is where other standards can fill the gap. Now let's take a look at ISO 50001. ISO 50001 is an internationally recognised standard that provides a framework for organisations to establish, implement and maintain an energy management system. Some may be familiar with its European-focused predecessor, BSEN 16001, which was published back in 2009, only to be superseded by ISO 50001 in 2011. The primary goal is to help organisations improve energy performance, including reducing energy consumption, increasing energy efficiency, and using energy more effectively. The benefits of implementing ISO 50001 include reducing energy costs. By identifying and addressing energy inefficiencies, you can significantly reduce your energy bills. We had great success with this when we worked closely with a branch of the NHS, where their initial energy spend was around 2.8 million per year across some 100 sites. With the implementation of ISO 50001, they reduced this by £1 million by doing things such as installing LED lighting, installing ground source heating, and investing in a biomass boiler at select sites. Next is improved energy performance. ISO 50001 helps organisations establish baselines, set targets, and track progress in improving energy performance. This is vital, as you can't hope to reduce what you can't measure. So ISO 50001 helps put the processes in place for you to be able to manage that energy monitoring and track your own improvement. You can also benefit from enhanced environmental performance. Reduced energy consumption leads to lower greenhouse gas emissions and a reduced environmental impact. Oftentimes, energy usage is the largest impact many organisations have on the environment, especially for those of us who may only have an office or a warehouse. The need to reduce your impact may not also be something you have a choice in now, as with the introduction of regulations such as SECR and ESOS, there is more responsibility on medium to large organisations to manage and reduce their CO2 footprint. And we do expect to see these regulations trickle down to smaller and smaller businesses as time goes on. Next is increased competitiveness. Demonstrating a commitment to energy efficiency can enhance an organisation's reputation and attract environmentally conscious customers and stakeholders. And lastly, you'll also benefit from improved operational efficiency. An energy management system can lead to improved operational efficiency through better resource management and reduced waste. For example, you would be surprised at how much energy is wasted through leakage, where old equipment has to use more energy to keep up. ISO 50001 puts the processes in place for resource management to ensure that everything is working optimally. So let's take a look at the disadvantages of ISO 50001, and some of these will be familiar. So again, starting with initial investment. Implementing an energy management system requires an initial investment in resources, including training, data collection, and possible help from a consultancy. Again, like ISO 14001, there would be additional costs if you were to go through full certification, as you'll need to pay for the assessment, annual surveillance audits, and recertification after 3 years. There is also limited guidance. Calculating your energy usage can be complicated, especially if you're spread across multiple sites and countries. In cases where you're renting space, you may face difficulties obtaining the information needed. Then on top of that is the actual calculation. When factoring in different countries with different energy conversions, it can get really tricky. ISO 50001's guidance in this regard is light in comparison to dedicated carbon standards. Next is resistance to change. Implementing changes to energy-using processes can sometimes be met with resistance from employees. A lot of practices will require a change in habits, such as turning off and unplugging all devices when leaving an office, or more frequent checks on equipment to ensure it's running optimally. And lastly, again this one will be familiar, limited scope. ISO 50001 primarily focuses on energy performance within an organisation's direct control, and may not address broader energy-related issues or the entire supply chain, which will include its own energy consumption considerations. Let's move on to the next standard, which is ISO 2400. ISO 2400 is an internationally recognised standard that provides guidance on sustainable procurement. It helps organisations integrate sustainable considerations into their procurement processes, ensuring that environment, social and economic factors are all taken into account when making purchasing decisions. First published in April 2017, this standard differs a bit from others as it's not a certifiable standard, it's a guidance document that you can align with. For those of you looking into ESG schemes, this standard is often cited as a key tool to help you get in the right place for scoring. In addition, for those of you looking into more comprehensive carbon reporting, supply chains are often one of the biggest sources of emissions. Alignment with this standard will allow you to take a good hard look at the suppliers you work with and determine if they hold the same sustainability values as you. So let's look at the benefits of implementing ISO 2400, starting with a reduced environmental impact. By selecting suppliers with strong environmental performance, businesses can reduce their overall environmental footprint. You also have a great chance to help influence your own supply chain. We know that if you've had a reliable supplier for a number of years, it's not just a simple case of cut and move on. Before it gets to that point, it's worth having a conversation with them to see how amicable they are towards aligning with your sustainability requirements. After all, they'd likely also feel the benefits of being more environmentally conscious. Next is improved social responsibility. ISO 2400 encourages organisations to consider the social and ethical impacts of their procurement decisions, such as fair labour practices and human rights. This is why ISO 2400 fits so well with many ESG schemes. As with any area of sustainability, it's not just about the amount of resources or carbon you save, there is also a very human element to sustainability, which is becoming just as much of a focus. Next is enhanced reputation. Demonstrating a commitment to sustainable procurement can enhance your reputation and your brand image. It shows that you're thinking and acting sustainably from start to finish for either your product or production or your service delivery. Businesses are all coming under more scrutiny in regard to their sustainability, and if you're in association with another business that has a complete disregard for it, it will reflect badly on you too if they come under fire on a public stage. Next is cost savings. Sustainable procurement practices can lead to cost savings through reduced waste, improved resource efficiency, and lower long-term maintenance costs. You may also find more sustainable suppliers offer you a better deal. After all, if you have been with the same supplier for years, you may not be aware of how the market price for their services has changed over the years. And lastly, increased innovation. Working with sustainable suppliers can expose you to new technologies, products, and services that can improve your own operations. I know it's nice to stay with what's familiar, but if you want to improve, it's worth experimenting to see what new suppliers could offer you. Now let's take a look at the disadvantages of implementing ISO 2400. Starting with an increased complexity. Integrating sustainability considerations into procurement processes can add complexity and require additional resources. This would include supplier checks before working with new suppliers, and a review of all current suppliers to see where improvements could be made. If your supplier agrees to align with your sustainability practices, then you'll need to check in with them to ensure that they're not just talking the talk. Next is finding sustainable suppliers. Identifying and qualifying sustainable suppliers can be challenging. Though more businesses are certainly making an effort to be more sustainable, ensuring that they have proof of their claims is essential. With greenwashing on the rise year on year, it's always good practice to double check. There is also potential for higher costs. In some cases, sustainable products and services may have a higher initial cost compared to more conventional options. This may be a case of a higher upfront investment that will pay itself back in a few years' time. In others, it may simply be a case of paying more for the sustainable option. And once again, this also has a limited scope. ISO 2400 primarily focuses on procurement practices and may not address broader sustainability issues within the organisation. This is where ISO 2400 can be supported by certifiable standards such as ISO 14001 and ISO 50001. And moving on to our last standard for today is ISO 14064-1. So ISO 14064-1 is an internationally recognised standard that provides a framework for organisations to quantify and report their greenhouse gas emissions and removals. You may be mistaken for thinking that this is a fairly new standard, but this has in fact been around since 2006. It received a major update in 2019 to bring it in line with the current business landscape, and included more guidance on reporting boundaries and reporting on indirect emissions. It helps organisations to understand their carbon footprint, set reduction targets, engage in carbon markets, and improve environmental performance. The benefits of implementing ISO 14064 include improved data quality. The standard provides a robust methodology for collecting, analysing, and reporting on greenhouse gas emissions data, ensuring accuracy and consistency. With the help of this standard, you can also set achievable reduction targets. So, by having an accurate way to measure your impact, you can look to set realistic and, more importantly, achievable reduction targets. Next is enhanced credibility and transparency. Both consumers and stakeholders are increasingly looking at real, tangible evidence of your carbon claims. Simply having a sustainability page on your website full of promises is no longer enough. You need facts and figures to back up what you say you're doing. And with increased sustainability and carbon reduction-focused legislation, this will soon not be an option for many businesses. Next is reduced climate risk. By understanding and managing your greenhouse gas emissions, you can better mitigate the risks associated with climate change, such as regulatory changes and physical impacts. This can include your influence on indirect sources of emissions. For most, this would be your supply chain, as if you require them to act more sustainably, then you are further reducing your impact in addition to theirs, which can only be a good thing in the end. And lastly on the positives is competitive advantage. It is an increasingly climate-conscious world, and businesses that can demonstrate their environmental performance through credible greenhouse gas emissions reporting will gain a competitive advantage. Just to highlight that, a report done by the Roundup in 2024 found that 78% of consumers feel sustainability is an important factor when shopping, so that's just something to keep in mind. Now let's look at the disadvantages of implementing ISO 14064. So the first, again, much like all the other standards, is initial investment. If you want to do this right, you will have to invest time, resources, and money. This could include hiring consultants to help you with the necessary calculations, and if you wish to go for full verification, then there will be an additional cost from a verification body. There is also ongoing maintenance. Maintaining an accurate and up-to-date greenhouse gas inventory requires ongoing effort and resources. Monitoring your emissions doesn't stop once you get a verification badge. It will be ongoing. But rest assured, once you have the processes in place, it should be fairly routine to manage. The next is data complexity. Collecting and analysing greenhouse gas emissions data can be complex, especially for large and diverse organisations, so you may need some initial help to do and understand this yourselves. And lastly, again, like many of the other standards we've spoken about today, there is a limited scope. So ISO 14064 primarily focuses on the quantification and reporting of greenhouse gas emissions and removals, and may not address broader sustainability issues. So for things like waste and general resource lifecycle management, standards such as ISO 14001 would be a helpful addition to support your sustainability efforts. And that's all the standards I'm going to take you through today. As mentioned at the start, this is by no means an exhaustive list, as there are more niche sustainability standards like ISO 2012-1 available that are aimed at specific sectors. There are also more under development, which is not surprising considering the global ongoing effort to reduce our environmental footprint, so we may come back to this in a future episode. If you'd like to learn more about the standards mentioned today, we'll link some of our previous episodes in the show notes that go into more detail regarding the implementation process for each of them. And of course, we'd be happy to help you with your sustainability journey, so if you'd like extra support, then don't hesitate to get in contact with us. And lastly, I'd just like to remind you once again about our upcoming ESG workshop. So join us on the 26th of March 2025 as we explain how ISO standards directly support ESG compliance, and pick from one of our 3 interactive sessions to get you started on your ESG journey. That's it from me. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to joining you again on the next ISO show.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.